Recently, I launched Amino for the second time, and today I'm here to talk about it. So let's get started.
Duty on a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
So, how did I build this thing? Well, let's start from the bottom and go from there. The motor mount is pretty much the exact same as the one used in my old high power rocket, but this one is just a little bit taller. It uses 3 centering rings with 4 through the wall fins. I glue these fins onto the motor mount and then cut holes in the body tube to slide them in later. Since these fins were going to be built the same exact way as I did for Ethel, there shouldn't be any problems, right? Since we are just copying one fin base and putting it on another rocket, just with a little bit of a differently designed fin, it should work, right? Like 3 out of the 4 fins shouldn't fall off when taking the fin alignment jig out, right? I don't know if you can get the hint, but 3 out of the 4 fins fell off when I was taking the fin alignment jig off. At least we got it to work though. Let's go over to the electronics part of the rocket. The avionics was built in this clear plastic tube. We chose this because we wanted to get the best possible view from the onboard camera. Obviously, there are some cons to this approach, such as the plastic getting dirty and trouble with aiming the electronics how you want it, but it all ended up working out in the end. Anyways, the way we made this electronics section is kind of weird. We took the wooden avionics bay we bought for Ethel and modified it a little bit to work for Amino. It was pretty much the exact same, it just looked very interesting. For data logging, we had an Egg Timer basic flight computer, and for onboard video, we had a Gopro Hero 8. Now there's one thing that you can probably see that I would want to emphasize a little bit. The Egg Timer is screwed on, while the GoPro is zip tied on. Obviously, this isn't the best idea when it comes to high power rockets, or any rocket in general, but the GoPro was big enough that it fit pretty well into the tube. For the upper part of the rocket right here, I just took excess body tube and a nose cone and glued them together. Now, let's go back down a little bit and talk about the recovery system. Amino used a 54-inch parachute with a 10-inch spill hole in the middle. The Kevlar shock cord was 20 feet long. We also had a chute release in there, but that broke a few days before launch. We used the ejection charge that was inside the motor to deploy the parachutes. This would cause a pretty major problem in the flight, but we'll get into that later. The shock cord was connected to a U-bolt on the bottom of the avionics section and an I-bolt on the top centering ring of the motor mount. The parachute, chute release, and Nomex blanket were all connected to the U-bolt as well. Now, if we put this all together, you will have a fully assembled rocket. Well, we're forgetting one thing. We're forgetting the motor. This rocket flew on an Aerotech I-500. It was supposed to go roughly 2,000 feet, like a little under. Once we bought the motor, we went out to the launch site to meet up with the vendor. He gave us the motor and we were ready for launch. We went out to the launch pad and we started putting the rocket on the rail. This is when we encountered a problem. The rocket was stuck. The rail buttons weren't very secure on the rocket. This caused putting the rocket on the rail literally impossible and would cause a lot of risk when trying to launch. I took the rocket off the rail and headed back to the table to try and put some 5-minute epoxy on it so that it would stay. After it looked like it was dry, we went back out and tried again. The same problem happened. The epoxy wasn't strong enough, so it fell apart and I had to think of something else. Luckily, one of the people there had a brand new launch tower that they were willing to let me use. We brought the tower to the launch site, hooked it all up, and put the rocket in. We were finally able to launch after many hours of waiting, and it went very well, besides the fact that there is a giant zipper on the back of the tube. I wonder what could have caused that. We used the ejection charge that was inside the motor to deploy the parachutes. This would cause a pretty major problem in the flight, but we'll get into that later. So basically, the motor ejection charge fired too soon, and it zippered. Now, I never adjusted the delay for the rocket motor. It just came like that. Luckily, I have some plans in the works that will make getting a failure like that very difficult. But there's still one thing we need to go over. The data. Welcome to the desk. As you can see, we have a lot of data here. We have a lot of data to go over. And this actually isn't the data we want to go over. Hold on. If we just go down here, we can see a lot. We can see, not a lot, but we can see some data. We have our filtered velocity 2, filtered velocity, filtered altitude, velocity, altitude. We have a lot of stuff. Let's start at the altitude. So we go up to about 1.9. Here, I'll just like zoom in here. Like right there, just so you can see. So yeah, we go up to like about, oh yeah, this is very interesting. But we go to a little under 1.9 thousand feet. We have the filtered altitude. So if we look at this, it's a lot smoother, especially like zoom in. We don't have all those, as much like bumps and stuff all over the place. So yeah, this shows pretty much the same thing. We have our velocity, which is just a whole bunch of stuff. All of this is from when it was dragging on the ground before we picked it up, and just this is the actual flight stuff, and this like the descent, the filtered velocity, and the second filtered velocity. So this is a very smooth graph. And now Amino is a much bigger rocket, so it didn't go very high. It only went like 1.9 thousand feet. So this flew on an I-500, and Ethel flew on an I-600. This sent Ethel, which is a lot smaller, and like it's not very hard to get high altitude with because it's light and all that. It went to like a little under 4,000. So yeah, I went to like 3.85K or 3.86K. feet, or what does that say? 3.8920 thousand feet. We have the filtered velocity too. You can see this is the flight, the filtered velocity, and what else can we see on the amino flight? Alright, well, that's all I have to say in this video, so I hope you all enjoyed, and see you next time. Bye.